So this is Independent Challenge 1 for Module 5, Worksheet 5.4, and we're going to start off with our first set of directions. So it says to name the range B7 to B13. I'm going to select the column from B7 to B13. I'm already in my Formula tab within my ribbon, and my view is still condensed, so I'm going to have my define names in my formula auditing. I'm going to press define name, and I'm going to name it as invoice date. And I'm going to select the scope as accounts payable. Then I'm going to select B4 as it asks me, and I'm going to define that name as well. Then I'm going to type in current date and select the scope as accounts payable. Then it says for E7 for us to enter a formula that calculates invoice due date. So we're going to add 30 to the invoice date. So we're going to select hour. We can put invoice date into our formula and then add 30. And then once we have that, you can use our fill handle and apply that to the rest. Then for age of invoice, we're going to start off with the equal sign as our formula, and it wants us to subtract invoice date from current date. So the order of the operation would be, we would want to have current date first with a minus sign, and then invoice date. So we're going to try to keep the formula. So we're going to do current date. On my formula bar, I'm going to put minus sign. Then I'm going to insert invoice date. Hopefully that will give me a positive number. I'm going to have 61. Then I can apply this formula to the rest of the column. It says in G7, oops, not F7, yeah, select G7. Okay, in G7, we need to enter an if function that calculates number of days if an invoice is overdue, assuming invoice must be paid in 30 days. So I could easily do equal sign and type in my formulas directly. For me, it's a little bit easier if I have an argument box open. So I'm going to do the if, and I'm going to input it into my boxes. So the logical test, and I'm going to follow the hint, if it's greater than 30, okay, so it says for me the steps I should take. I realize I will want to select and input into my formula my current invoices and current dates and minus signs, so I can't really select it. I don't know if I could select it. Actually, I could select it, or I could just manually fill it in. I'll see if I can manually fill it in. So I'm going to start off with my equal sign. If, open the parentheses, so my logical test is, since it's bolded, that means this is what it's asking me to do input first. I should see if the age of invoice is greater than 30. So age of invoice, I'm going to select that. I'll do a greater than sign. I'll put the type in the number 30, then comma. The value, if true, it says right here, it should calculate the current date minus the invoice date. So I will input using formula current date minus, and it says minus the invoice due date. Minus invoice due date. Then I can do comma and then value if false should be 0. And I will close off my parentheses and see what I have. Then I will use my autofill and see and apply it to the rest. So I could already see here we have a 0. Age of invoice is only 16 days, so it's not overdue. Here it's only 25 days, it's not overdue, it's not greater than 30, and same for these as well. Then it says in H7 to enter an AND function to prioritize the overdue invoices. So let's see if we can just manually enter in the functions. So =, and, open parentheses, logical 1. I should check if the number of overdue days is greater than 0. So I'm going to select 31, put in the greater than sign, type in 0, then comma, and I'm ready to move on to the logical number 2 since it's bolded. It should check if the amount is more than 1,000. So I will see if I will select 31 or G7. I will check if it's greater than 1,000. I will close off my parentheses and see what I get. False. So my formula is if basically the number of days overdue. So it says if it's greater than 0, and then it's asking if it's greater than 1,000. My output is it's false. Even though it's greater than 0, it's less than 1,000, so it's not a priority. I will use my fill handle and I will apply it, and it seems that these invoices are not really as a priority even though they're overdue. It says use the name manager to define this range as priority. So I'm going to select H7 to H13. I'm going to define the name. I'm going to call it, it's already here, priority, accounts payable, or I could type it in if it doesn't pop up right away for you. And press OK. And this is it for Independent Challenge 1. Now I can easily go and see what my improvements are that the professor requires. So it's asking me to move A4 to G2 and B4 to H2. So A4 to G2. Alright. A4 to G2. Okay. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to wait till my 4-sided arrow pops up, and I'm going to move the current date to 2. It says we can't do that to a merged cell. I'll press OK. I can try unmerging them. So I'm going to go to Home. Let's see where I can find to unmerge it. Merge styles, no. So my merge unmerge is going to be in my alignment. It unmerged everything. Now I can move my current date from A4 to G2 and my actual date for the current date to H2. Once I have that, I can try to merge this back together. And then the next step would be to connect rows 3 to 5. It says correct rows 3 to 5, add a red double border to row 3. So correct rows. Technically, since they're empty, we don't need them anymore. So I'm going to select them. I'm going to right click and I'll delete them. Then it says to add a double red border to the top of row 3. And this would be in my font groups. I'm going to select alright, let's do the top double border. Top and thick bottom border. No, I need thick. Okay, so for this, I will have to go onto more borders where I can select. I'll click, make sure I have the double line selected, and make sure I have the top border selected. So it's already showing me how it will look like. I will try to have the color in red and select my top border. Once I see that it has been filled to the color red, I will then press OK. I will click elsewhere and it's already showing up. It's in a red double border. I'll go back to my adjustments and see what it's asking. It says correct column D. I'm going to go check out what my column D is. Okay, so what I just did, I undid my steps so I can show you what I was able to figure out. Okay, once I have moved my current date and the number for that date, I will go and delete these rows. I know it's kind of, you already did that. I just did a few steps back. Okay, so I have this and I have that. I will have to reformat it, so I'm gonna merge and center. I will show you what I was having difficulties with. So I can't merge and center this data because it's only going to keep whatever is in the left value. So I'll press cancel. So technically, in a way, I can only merge and center the title. Then for current date and that, what it is we can't really merge it, but for the visual aesthetic, so that way, because we are creating a type of visual worksheet for the client, so the best thing that we can do with this information to kind of have it matched in and formatted would just to find the color that is similar to the color used in here and just fill it in. So I will select both of these and I'm going to go and see which one fits in. So for this one, it's Ice Blue Accent 5, lighter 80%. That matches in with the rest of it. So this is as much close to the formatting as I can do. Then the next step, it says to create the data range for invoice due date. So here it goes, I was trying to find information how to merge it. So I will go back to my assignment. It says create a due date range or column E. I have column E, so the closest thing is creating the range. I mean, I can define this, so I can do E4 to E13, and I mean, it's already labeled, right? So I will just see if I could just create a name range for it. Define name, and I will just write whatever the professor is asking due date. So underscore. Due underscore date, and for accounts payable, and press OK. Here it then shows up that it's the due date. Even though I'm clicking on here and it says invoice date, the invoice date is part of a formula. So our range name is actually right here, which is the due date. I will go back, see what other modifications need to be made. So it says correct column D. I'm not too sure what it means on editing column D really requires. I can check if this is all in currency, which it is. They all have a $sign. So I don't know exactly what he's asking for that. And then it says, starting on the second row, apply 3 statistical functions to appropriate worksheet categories. Now this is pretty confusing because I really don't know what specific statistical functions he's asking for, and it says to also correct row 11. Well, there really is nothing on row 11. So, I mean, it is kind of confusing what he's asking. So I'll just skip ahead and just work on this, starting on the second row below row 11. So if that's 11, on the second row would probably be row 12. So for row D, maybe what they're asking for is maybe slightly a little bit more clarification. I can assume that maybe they want us to clarify what amount. I mean, if this is an invoice, and here we have invoice due date, age of invoice, number of days overdue, priority, we can write amount due. I mean, that's one type of correction that we can do. Oops. Amount due. So what I will do, I will just take these and I will just play around with the formatting. I can do wrap text and just kind of play around with the setting. Adjust the column width. So I mean, these are some things that I'm able to do to kind of help with the formatting, but other than that, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I am still kind of confused on what they want in regards to 3 statistical functions to appropriate worksheet categories. One type of statistical function I could think of that they probably want would be averaging the amount due, or averaging the amount of age of invoices, or doing the maximum amount due or the minimum amount due. These are 3 types that are kind of like can be grouped together. And then it also here says evaluate each formula for hard values greater than 0. Is this an if function? I'm not quite sure. So this is where you just have to make your best guess on what statistical 3 functions you want to use, and then just apply them to the different categories. I mean, this is basically as much as you can do with what we've got.